here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Hey, and to all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day to you on this beautiful May 14th. You know, it's the anniversary of Doc Gooden's no-hitter in 1996. It's a lot. It's also a day that I reflected on Instagram, and I'll get to that in a second. But I also want to say there's a new blog that just dropped a couple of days ago on my website, alexgnyc.com. That's alexgnyc.com. And I titled it My Dad's Observant Eye and Ear and Eye, and how we and he expanded the connection with George Steinbrenner just through his trait of observation. You know, his trait of observation was listening to every radio show possible, was listening to music, was watching TV, was reading books, and actually reading the newspaper cover to cover. So whether it's the news, Daily News, the New York Post, the New York Times, or even hell, the AM New York, I am going to commit to reading everything cover to cover, because that trait of observation that my dad had was really, I really like to inherit that even more. And that was kind of my point. And then I thought today's Mother's Day. And yes, my mom. Happy Mother's Day to my mom. And, you know, she by trade is observant because she's a journalist. And she always liked to say I was underfoot while she wrote. And as we talk about it, I would love to inherit her not only calmness and stability that she's offered me the last 31 years of us being a dynamic mother-son duo, but her observations, her writings, her journalistic instincts. I'd love to inherit that 10 years into radio and in this podcast endeavor known as the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. So that's my commitment to both my parents and my stepdad Vic, is to be observant and always on the lookout and always have my eyes peeled, my ears tuned up, right, and tuned in to the world that is New York City, to the world that is the news cycle, and to the world that is adaptability, accountability, and accessibility. And that's where the news part comes in, because here's the observation I made this weekend, which all of us might have made or might not have made. You know that beautiful Roosevelt Hotel that closed down because of the pandemic? They somehow have reopened it for the migrants crossing the border and being sent up here by Governor Abbott. I just find it funny that, you know, it was closed for the regular touristy people, but let's open it right back up for the migrants. I think that's kind of disturbing. I think this whole thing of migrants unfortunately being dropped on our doorstep is really just unfortunate. And I don't think the expiration of Title 42, especially as I said, troops were being sent to the border to prevent crossing, then why even end Title 42, President Biden? That was my concern. And then lastly, in this few minutes here, as you know, in addition to migrants being housed, veterans are being kicked out of shelters. They're not being treated well at all here in New York City. And that's very bothersome, considering we just saw a Marine be charged for a chokehold after trying to be a good Samaritan. He's charged with second-degree murder. Manslaughter. And it's just a reflection of how poorly the veterans are being treated in this country. Is it not? I think it is. Now, should you have him chokeholded for 15 minutes? No. But he was doing what he thought he had to do to subdue an irate homeless person. And then one last thing, which I guess stirs the pot, if you think about it. Since the Jordan Neely death, I've noticed more panhandlers, and I don't know if we're being set up to do more because there was another incident of a strap hanger, if you will, right? That's what they call it, commuters. A strap hanger being a rider of the subway, standing up against a disorderly man, but the one that stands up against a disorderly man gets arrested, not the disorderly man. How crazy is that? That's where we are. You cannot defend a subway car now. And if there are more panhandlers taking advantage of the situation, we are in trouble because I feel like they're trying to test us in New York, and we can't let them test us. We have to stay strong and stay vigilant, stay cautious, and stay vigilant in the way you act, but be observant, especially if panhandlers now take advantage of the situation. That's what we cannot have here in New York City. We should not be overrun by the mentally disturbed. We must help them. But now the death of Jordan Neely, the outcry, the arrest, it says, hey, you're mentally disturbed, you can run the whole city? You can run our subway cars? Be observant. And that's my message to you on this podcast. Have a great day on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.